Hi, honey. Welcome back to In Between, a designated space for those who would like to rest, to listen. We're in part 2 of the sub-series of The Red Road. Today's episode brings us back to 2021. Again, just flipping through the journals, seeing which one called me, letting my finger land on whichever story or medicine was meant to be shared in this week's episode. And again, a moment where I did not know that this medicine would be relevant years later. You know, just like when I needed, like all good science, good medicine does. This episode is called Metabolism of Survival. I opened my journal, the same way I opened the last one. And, letting the creator just choose the page for me yet again. I ended up landing on a memory that I've forgotten. And this is why it's really good to write things down, to trace back. This memory was one of a hummingbird flying to the feeder, just outside my home in that time. And I had written on there, "Thank you, hummingbird, for your medicine." And of course, back then, I didn't really understand what medicine was. I was just getting into the understanding of working with the nahuales, working with the spirit animals, working with what the creator was sending to me in physical form, and learning how to attune to the earth and its signs and its wonders. When I wrote it then, I didn't realize the blessing of what it is right now. Now the hummingbird to me is like a flash of spirit in motion. And as I just kept reading in the journal, I realized that it wasn't just one hummingbird, it was two. Two of them going at the same feeder. They were darting, they were claiming that feeder. They were territorial over that feeder, just chasing and just claiming space. And then suddenly the memory just came back to me because I remember that flash of that memory came back to me. But remember, the creator doesn't send things unintentionally. Everything is sent intentionally at this point. And speaking on intentionality, there's a reason why they're small, okay? There's a reason why they're small. They may be small, but these tiny little birds, they carry big things, really big things. So typically, hummingbirds show up when you need sweetness. Obviously, this is why they were going to the feeder, for sweetness, for energy, to feed. Hummingbirds come to you for endurance. They also come to you to remind you that, your spirit is still alive. They also show up when you need to protect your energy. You need to claim your space. Again, the territory thing I'm speaking on right now. Or that you need to stop letting others drink from your feeder. Okay? Keep in mind, hummingbirds are not passive creatures at all. As much as we want to see them as they are, because they're so dainty and beautiful. So we think, we perceive. They are fierce. They are territorial. They know exactly what they need to survive. That's the medicine of these birds. And that's the part of the medicine that we should acknowledge. So, among many of the Chichimeca, the Guachichil, which is part of my ancestry, okay? These are the nomads of the northern plains of Mexico, of the desert region. Hummingbird is not just a bird to them, as well as the cardinal. But we'll go into cardinal maybe in another video, another time. But the hummingbird is a messenger. And if anything, it's a reincarnated warrior, a spirit of a warrior come back. A carrier of prayers. It's also a guide between worlds. Okay? Some teachings say about the hummingbirds through my ancestors is that the hummingbird carries messages from the ancestors. The hummingbird also represents the warrior, again, going back into that archetype, who fights with heart, all heart, no force, okay? Again, tied to the heart, tied to the blood, the ancestry. They're the fire of life. They are connected to the sun, mainly because of how much their metabolism burns, how fast it burns. Their bodies get so freaking hot, which is why they're continuously feeding to cool their bodies back down. They also have a fierce will to just keep going, okay? Which makes sense because, well, they have very high metabolisms, like I just mentioned, of any bird, really. And so if we can relate this back to somebody who's dealing with chronic illness, who's dealing with mental illness, who's dealing with something very chronic in their lives, whether it be a phase, a transition, this symbolism hits a little bit differently, okay? Which we'll go into that later. So when I saw those two hummingbirds just going at it, fighting over the feeder, I didn't understand the message then, but now, one hummingbird, if I could relate it to myself, it was me. Or if you could relate it to yourself, it could be you. Okay, because this is us sharing the medicine with each other. My spirit, my sweetness, your sweetness, your endurance, my endurance. That was literally the first hummingbird, right? The one that I initially seen. The other, right? That was everything that drains you. That was everything that drains me. The illness, the obligations, the people who think that they can take without giving, okay? Or the world that demands what? Demands more than our bodies can offer. They were fighting over the same nectar. And Spirit was showing me that you must guard your energy, your sweetness, and claim your feeder. Because even the smallest beings knows what keeps them alive. Now, for those of us living with chronic illness or are going through phases of survival, hummingbird medicine is potent. It's not just cute, okay? It's not just symbolic at this point. It's survival. It teaches us to rest deeply when time calls, to move when we can, obviously, to replenish, to conserve energy. Again, the resting part, conserving energy, is very important, and to trust our instincts like the hummingbird is led to the nectar it seeks, and to return to the feeder again and again. So even when the world perceives us as fragile, those lovely creatures, those ones that are whipping back and forth, they were reminders to us that fragile things can still be fierce. Small things can still be powerful. And tired bodies, as ours, can still carry spirit, that fire. The metabolism, so we're going to go back into that. The metabolism for the hummingbird, or chronically ill person, we know what it means to burn through energy too fast, living on the edge of depletion, knowing what it means to wake up and just still be just tired, right? Wondering where our energy went in the middle of our damn sleep. You got to remember this, though, and this is what the ancestors said to me. Remember, your pace is not a flaw. Your exhaustion is not any sort of weakness. Papas, mamitas, whoever is listening to this. Your survival in itself is holy. It's holy. It's a miracle that you are still here. So now, as I sit with this memory and thankful that you sat with me in this too. The two hummingbirds fighting over that feeder, the whole dynamic of it. I hope you understand the medicine now. About how those fierce, beautiful creatures, as yourself, as myself, we tend to live on the edge of depletion constantly. Our hearts are beating so fast that it's a miracle that we even survive at all. And yet we choose every time, every day, every minute, every moment, every hour, every episode, every moment of exhaustion to be here. We choose to return to the sweetness. And maybe that's the answer for some of you. Return to the sweetness. Stop feeding on nectar that's bitter and old to survive. We need to forge new pathways of survival and moving to different, plants, flowers that have that natural sustenance. We're moving into sweetness now. We're tired of drinking from old sugar at this point, old ways of coping and surviving. I mean, the hummingbird doesn't get mad at itself because its heart is beating so fast. The hummingbird recognizes that beat as the sign that its life is still there. Yeah, they choose to live every single moment of every single day. There's no rest with them, but except the rest that comes when they drink too much. And going back to the analogy I just used, when you drink from old feeders, drink that old sugar, you're depleting yourself even more. You're exhausting yourself even more to the point where you become sicker. And that's not what we're in this season. So, continue on the red road. And rest when it calls, thank you, thank the creator, thank your ancestors, thank these Nahuales for coming in, for relaying these messages, pass it on if you feel the need to. And thank you for walking with me. It's a long road ahead, but you had the endurance to do so. And may the hummingbird visit you when the time comes. Bless you. Until next time.